If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started.
Who is the last Ronin? In a future battle-ravaged New York City, a lone surviving turtle embarks on a seemingly hopeless mission seeking justice for the family he lost. That is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Last Ronin, and this is the Comic Book Kaiju Podcast, Book of the Month edition. This is our December Book of the Month, and for this episode, I have Mr. Chris Eaton joining me all the way from a cold,
the frozen east of Knoxville, Tennessee.
How are you, Mr. Eaton?
Cold. Other than that, I'm doing well, sir. How are you?
I'm doing very well because I also have on the line with me, coming to us live from the planet of Mempho, Daddy, Marcus Seaberry.
Mercy, Daddy.
Yeah.
M-Town anything, baby.
Mr. Seaberry, are you keeping warm over there in Memphis?
Man, y'all know my southern ass ain't used to this. Single digits today. Well, today is double digits. Yesterday it was like 9, now it's 14. I'm like, I don't feel the difference. Because the windshield like negative something, I was like, see, Lord, no. Mm-mm.
Yeah, it's 64 here in Arizona. It was a high of 69 today.
Shut
it was
up.
Pretty cold
I hate you.
We ain't friends no more.
For real.
It was pretty cold here in Arizona, but we are here to talk not weather, but the book of the month, which Mr. Chris Eaton picked, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Last Ronin. Mr. Eaton, why don't you tell us why you selected this selection?
So, much like most kids of my that came up when I did, I was a huge Ninja Turtles fan.
Nice. Now,
the difference being that just because of my personality, when I get into something, much like with wrestling, plug for Kick Out Kaiju, I want to get into the full history of it. I want to know everything. I want to know the backstory. I want to know all of it. So I dug into that even as a younger kid and found out about the comics, which are much more adult than the cartoon show was.
Yes.
And I never really a lot of people grow out of things like a well-adjusted adult. I don't. I just carry stuff with me. And I would say Ninja Turtles, wasn't super into it, but it was always on the periphery of, this is cool. They're doing this thing now or this now. And I'd always sort of stay up to date loosely with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I started hearing rumblings about this, The Last Ronin, and how, it started getting rave reviews and things like that. And so I thought I'd check it out, and I was blown away. And that's what led me to picking this particular month.
Okay, yeah, and we're kind of similar in the eras in which we grew up. Mr. Marcus Seaberry, why don't you tell? I don't think you've ever told me your history with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. How did you come across them?
All right, I was a Cub Scout once upon a time.
Oh, dang!
I had a subscription to Boys Life. Boys Life did one of them articles that be low key condescending. Pow, boom! Look, guys, new comics. But in this article, they talked about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This is like maybe spring of '87.
Oh, dang.
But they messed up some stuff, though. I think they said they did Kung Fu, and they said it wasn't Master Splinter. They said it was Master Skeeter.
Skeet.
Wasn't ready. Should have been ready for it. But I was like, oh, well, that sounds interesting. Y'all know me. I was pretty much a superhero guy. I had been enlightened by then. But then, in the fall of '87, I stumbled across think it's like a 3-issue. I mean, or maybe it was 5-part. It was the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles animated miniseries.
Yes.
Then I run back and find my boys' life, and I was like, "Oh, that's them," but they're a cartoon, and because I still haven't come across the actual comic. So, and I'm watching because, like, I think once it comes back, the first season was like coming on like Sundays out here, so I would see it sporadically. Then it kind of started blowing up about 89, 90. And I like watch the show pretty faithfully. Of course I like Leonardo and Donatello. I saw the first movie theatrically with my mom Friday.
Nice.
Then I think I bought some trading cards. Like as I might have told you all before, my parents kind of shamed me out of action figure buying, so I wasn't buying figures. But I think my cousin Lee, who was younger than me, had Metalhead.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah. So like the little metal turtle. So I like. I thought that was cool. I kind of looked at his.
I absolutely had that one.
Yes, I did as well.
But it was always kind of surface. Like everyone, like I think Dreamwave might have been publishing some Turtles comics for a minute in the early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Read the original Eastman Laird stuff, but I always knew like that stuff really wasn't for kids because they were parodying Daredevil and Ronin, some Frank Miller stuff.
Right.
Yeah, so like, I was aware of the different cartoon incarnations of, I think there was a period in my life where I was off every Friday, so I would like halfway watch that Ninja Turtles: The Next Mutation live action thing that Saban did.
Oh no!
Boy, that was
bad. I still might buy that collection though, because it was just I don't know. It just
rough.
I don't know, man. It like holds a place in my heart, I guess, and like
no shame in that.
Although they did do a crossover with Power Rangers in Space, which however many year old me was absolutely freaking stoked about.
Oh yeah.
What about that one? Yeah, and like I've seen every movie. Matter of fact, the only one I didn't see theatrically was 3. Turtles in Time, because it's kind of I did on like VHS, and then I saw the animated TMNT. Then I saw the 2 that Michael Bay did. I've always watched the movies that I kind of glance at the different cartoon interpretation. Now that first one on Nickelodeon, probably my favorite episode was when John Heder played Napoleon Bonafrog, and he's basically doing a Napoleon Dynamite impersonation.
Nice.
That was hilarious. But but I hadn't, like I said, I probably hadn't read no Turtles comics outside of a free comic book day special since like a little bit of that Dreamwave run. So I know IDW been doing good stuff. I read publications that talk about comics like Comic Shop News, and I'm on, CBR.com. But like I bought the first issue of this, and I was just like, yeah, it is cool. And I'm like, but also let me go trade weight on it, because I don't just be fooling with turtles like that. And I'm gonna tell y'all, full disclosure, this very week I went to a local store and bought the physical book. It is a nice, pretty, beautiful trade collection.
Very much so. I actually got it, and it kind of spurred this pick. Now I don't know if this is well known, and I don't know how much of the movie was filmed there, but some of the first theatrical movie was filmed in Wilmington, North Carolina. And I didn't think about that till like right now, but I bought it at a comic shop in Wilmington, North Carolina. Shout out Memory Lane Comics.
Nice. Very nice.
All right. Since we're doing shout out novel where I bought my copy. Memphis, baby.
And I actually picked up mine on Amazon on Kindle. They have a sale going on. It's only $6. So if you're into the digitals, you can check out The Last Ronin on Amazon/Kindle. Now, I have a similar upbringing as to all of you. The animated series was what I got into first. And then later on, I found out, oh, there's comic books of these things. Also, big into the action figures. And then as each animated series came out over the years, I followed them, followed along with the live action films, including the Michael Bay's. And Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles has always been one of those franchises that's been in my life. And I was thinking about the legacy of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles as I was reading The Last Ronin in 2022, thinking about my early 1990s self, loving pizza, loving martial arts, loving the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I said, there's few franchises that, number one, are indie. They were created independently. And then number two, that stand the test of time, that so many generations, multiple generations love the same franchise. Really, the only other one I could think of just off the top of my head was Star Wars, where just every generation I can think of has a Star Wars story and relates to Star Wars in a different way. The same thing can be said about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And it's funny because in the forward of the collection, Robert Rodriguez, he has a quote on the front, but he also writes the forward. And he talked about how his children, each child can define their Turtles experience based off of whatever era they were growing up and whatever animated show was on at that time. And they all related back to, oh yeah, it's not authentic unless it's the 2002 animated series or, whatever it was. And I found that fascinating that it can have that hold on people's imaginations for that long. And that gets into that Grant Morrison thing, Eaton, of these characters some of are going to be more real than we are because
right,
they're around
just
before
because they're
us.
fictional doesn't mean they're not real. Yeah,
right. They're around before us. They'll be around after us, and just people's imaginations keeps them alive. So that's what I was thinking about, was just kind of the legacy of the Turtles as I was reading Last Ronin. But just the premise alone got me interested. I was actually reading this as it came out issue to issue. The only really negative thing I can say about this story was the release of it. As if you're reading it in trade, you're not going to have any of these problems, but there was a lot of delays, and to the point where it was like I had forgot what was happening in the story and I had to come back and reread things. So the release schedule was the only real negative thing I could say about the book. But the actual story itself, it's that type of sci-fi thing that I love, that what if scenario, the Dark Knight Returns future storyline where the hero has to come out of retirement or save the city for the last time. I love that. And it's even got some of that Frank Miller Ronin, story of obviously being called The Last Ronin, and just his inspiration of Daredevil in general on the Turtles can be felt and is prevalent throughout. So I had a really good time as I was reading The Last Ronin, and then kind of like I said, thinking about the legacy of the Turtles. And I can't just think of too many other franchises that are going to have this type of impact and be independent ideas of, all right, these two guys came up with them, and never would have thought. There's a couple documentaries that you can watch on, I think, Paramount Plus, and I think there's one on Netflix also, but just the rise of the Turtles.
Yes, the toys that made us Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles episode.
it's a great one. Yeah.
Yeah. I just can't, like I said, I never thought in the 90s I would be a grown man thinking about the Turtles. And that's what Eaton said about letting go. And I think our generation is like that. There's so many things that we see today that are popular that were popular when we were kids. And not just the Turtles, but even superhero stuff and different, let's say Masters of the Universe has a new animated show on Netflix. So it's just all cyclical. Everything's coming back in waves and in phases. But Eaton, was there anything that kind of grabbed a hold of you and made you say, this is the story that I want to talk about for our book of the month? Like, what was it about The Last Ronin that kind of captured your attention?
Few things. First of all, the art is fantastic.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
but I really think you can't properly talk about this book without talking about its influences.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is, I don't think this story exists if it's not for The Dark Knight Returns, as you mentioned.
Yes.
There's several things that this story does that improve upon, in my opinion, what happens in Dark Knight Returns. Um, if you look at something like in The Dark Knight Returns, Batman's internal monologue being out there for us to read as thought bubbles. Well, that gets externalized in this story, and we see the Last Ronin's, no spoilers for who that is. We see uh, the Last Ronin's internal monologue being externalized through the device of this Greek chorus of ghosts that are haunting his brain.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is genius.
Mm-hmm.
There's another story that's probably it's not probably, it's a lot less well known than The Dark Knight Returns, that I don't know if it's a direct influence or if it's just a correlation in my mind. But the last volume of Grant Morrison's run on New X-Men is called Here Comes Tomorrow. And it is set in the future, and it's only tangentially connected to what happened in the previous volume. And it's sort of this dystopian, setting. And for some reason, my mind drew a direct correlation from that book to this one. So those are the two big influences that really stuck into my mind. But what really stuck out to me and why I wanted to talk about it was, I think this is The Dark Knight Returns, but it has fixed everything that you could even say was a nitpick about The Dark Knight Returns. Um, it's a serious story, but it doesn't feel overly self-important. It's epic without feeling like it's trying to be epic. And I think if we look at from 2022, if we look at Dark Knight Returns, I feel like it's kind of trying to be what it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like this is just trying to tell a good story, and it does. And I'm not trying to dunk on The Dark Knight Returns. I love that book,
But let's keep it a buck though. Them sequels a little shaky.
Oh yeah.
Matter of fact, DK2 is some bull crap. I'm sorry. I will stand by and argue that forever.
Actually,
you're not wrong.
That's an interesting thing, Seaberry. I wanted to actually put a little pin in that. What do you think the sequels impact the legacy of the original Dark Knight Returns? Do you think they lower or lessen it in any way because they are so bad?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna say this. 3 is cool to me only because Brian Azzarello like co-writes, so like he gets to rein in whatever mania is afflicting Frank Miller. So like I can tolerate 3, but yeah, 2 I was just like, oh well, I ain't gonna front. I laughed for a while and thought that it was okay, but then once All Star Batman and Robin came out, like, it's my hero's crazy. All right,
right.
Yeah. Like I love you, Frank Miller, but you're not. But yeah, dude, because like I've literally heard conversations in bookstores like, "Oh, that's the first Dark Knight." Well, I started with 2 and I hated it so bad, and look, I was like, "No, this is before Frank Miller went crazy."
Let me add, that's actually a good question, Vactor, too. So let's apply that logic then, that question to the Turtles. How do you think that this story, which is a very adult, very, let's be honest, in places grim story, how do you think that impacts the lineage or legacy of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which for the most part, at least in popular media, has been a very kid-friendly brand?
Yeah. Well, I think it adds to the original. It's like an extension of the Mirage comics. And that was what, like you said, very much darker and grittier than what the animated show was.
Yeah.
And for many years, I remember trying to convince people like, hey, Turtles did not start off as cowbunga dudes, like a surfer, pizza loving guys. Like it was serious Daredevil slash Teen Titans.
Yeah. I mean, the first movie isn't even all the way that.
Right. Right.
Yeah, man. When Raphael get like hurt, I was like, whoa, hold the phone, guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I still love that. I still quote that first movie and the second one quite a bit. But yeah, those darker turtles to me are what I'm interested in as an adult.
Darker
obviously.
turtles are better turtles.
Yeah. The kid friendly and we've seen a lot of those with the more recent animated shows as well. They're fine, I think, for continuing the franchise and continuing. Okay, we got to get new readers in, we got to get new fans in, but the grim and gritty turtles is what kind of keeps my attention. So this, The Last Ronin, I think, like I said, it's just another piece of this puzzle now that's continuing to be created as we go along here. And I did an episode earlier with my buddy Justin Jorfy on the IDW Turtles line that's currently going on right now. And
great stuff.
I still have not caught up on that, but I will. I promise you I will get caught up on it. And it seems like that run, the current IDW run of the main TMNT title, as well as this Last Ronin, are puzzle pieces, and I think going to be anchors for the future of people talking about the quality of Turtles overall and TMNT stuff. I think the franchise is in good hands right now because of the creators that are coming on and giving their take on the Turtles. So I think Last Ronin is just, like I said, an extension of the Mirage, the original Mirage comics. And the really, what also improves upon the Mirage comics is the art style is still hard for me to get into when I go back and look at those original Mirage comics. And on Free Comic
black
Book
and
Day,
white.
Yeah, the black and white, and then just the way the turtles are drawn, the character style, I'm just not a fan of. But
the Teenage Mutant Ninja Tortoises.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. They did a Free Comic Book Day rendering that was the original story, but in a newer modern art style.
Nice.
I thought that was kind of interesting. But yeah, that's just to answer your question. I think it's going to prop up the franchise. I think Last Ronin is just going to be a pillar for them to stand on.
Yeah,
so, it's this is the kind of story, and like you said, you see it as a sort of a bookend of the Mirage comics.
Mm-hmm.
What's great about the writing of this story is it can be the last turtle story in any canon.
Yes, right.
That's what's fantastic about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we've entered this age where multiple versions of a property can exist at the same time.
Right.
Like, for example, there's a more serious He-Man on Netflix that picks up where the 80s shows left off and went in a more different direction. But
it's really good too.
Kiddified
yes.
He-Man, the Master of the Universe. If you like that, if you want to introduce your kids to it, also the same. Transformers has, the movies which kind of get grim, and the comics which are kind of serious. But then they have some cartoons that are, like the doing on Paramount Plus that kind of have some lighter moments to it. I mean, I think it's just, and I guess Turtles might have been the pioneers of that, because you had grim comics, and then you had like cartoons and like
lighter.
Yeah, like the Archie comics,
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
right.
Which were more kiddie, and it's like I knew the difference. I wasn't confused, and
right.
And I mean, I think we kind of hit the age where people are like, all right, I'll have my kids read this version, I'll read this version, whatever. And I just think it's brilliant, man. I just think it's just well done, just all around, man. And it's like a great little kind of like a mission of vengeance, and just the last Ronin. It's just very entertaining. It draws you in, and I know there's a prequel story that that's about to come out soon, and I'm like, you know what? I kind of welcome it. Like,
Wanted
I
to keep going.
yeah, I really like the world building that is in this
Yeah,
book.
same. It kind of feels completed to me, like the world is like a character in the story, kind of like a Batman Beyond with New Gotham.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I think, like you said, this is definitely an interesting bookend to the Mirage story. And I know I've talked to a few people that kind of got a little dusty at the end. And I think it's a great emotional tale that it goes on throughout. If I had one nitpick, I would say it's the villain, the overall villain of this story. I just didn't find him that compelling. I was much more involved in the antagonist and the ghost, like you said, that the chorus line, that whole journey and bring in my own baggage of the turtles from my youth
Right.
into this. I just thought that the the villain was just not up to par for where I wanted him to be.
Let me so I want to talk about the villain for a second. I feel like you can look at this two ways. You can look at it like, is it worthy of the villains they've dealt with before? Like, in the shadow of the Shredder and
Right.
Krang and so forth.
Right.
Iruku Hiroto is the worst. Like the actual worst. And I don't mean he's a lame villain. I mean he's just the worst.
Evil.
And you really, that's honestly, this story would still be good without such a like megalomaniacal yet also somehow bratty foil for the last Ronin. But man, I was invested in seeing this dude get his butt kicked
Yeah,
from pretty early on.
yeah. I was like, Turtle Dude got to handle him.
Yeah.
He needs to die.
I wanted to see that man get dealt with. Like,
Yeah, he's like, yeah, he was a habitual line stepper.
like yes. You wanted to, I wanted to see the last Ronin open up a can of ninja on him.
Eaton, I had a thought while we were discussing legacy for a second there. What are your thoughts on, and I specifically am asking you because I know your education background. Growing up, we had stories that existed in a, not a time capsule, but they had a beginning, middle, and end. Let's say like Moby Dick, right?
Sure.
They had these literary classics as we were growing up. Those stories existed and they ended. Now we have stories like this, or I should say we have franchises like this that, okay, we're going to tell you every story that has ever existed, and then we're going to tell you the stories after that, and then we're going to tell you the stories before that, and we're going to tell you the stories of their mamas and their daddies, and then their daddy's brother-in-laws. So
Right.
it's all of these connected storylines. Do you think that is better or worse than just having the main thing itself, like just having the main story?
That's a really good question, and I think it depends on the story. Really good example. Not to turn this into a Star Wars podcast, I love the movie Rogue One.
Yeah,
it's probably top three, maybe top two Star Wars movies from me.
Nice.
Now, that to me is a story that needed telling. Solo, although all praise is due to Donald Glover as Lando, tried to answer a lot of questions that I don't think anybody was asking.
Right.
And I think that's a lot of times what prequels do, and sequels sometimes
Right.
do,
Right.
is try to answer questions that nobody was asking.
Right.
This particular story, I don't feel like it does that. I think it's just trying to tell a new story in a in a new setting with some, time honored
I
characters.
agree.
Yeah.
Well,
I think like there's this, like you said, with a lot of franchises right now, it's about creating the content so the content can be consumed and more money
Yes.
can be made, which
Right.
that's entertainment, and I
Mm-hmm.
understand that. But I also think there's something to be said for saying, okay, this story is correct, and this story doesn't need anything else. I could expand, but just a quick sidebar, a good example of this. There's a video game that came out in 1995, Super Nintendo. It was very important to my life, still is. It's called Chrono Trigger.
Yeah.
Probably my favorite video game ever made.
Nice.
And they made a very loose sequel called Chrono Cross for the PlayStation back in like 99, I think.
Yes.
And people have always wanted another sequel or a remake or something like that. And not that I wouldn't be stoked to see it, but that story is so crystallized in my mind, and the look of that story and the sound of the music, um, that I don't think you need to touch it. Like,
Mm.
you could make a remake, and of course I'd play it, but it wouldn't be the thing.
Right.
Just like with Final Fantasy VII. So I think the reboots or the remakes or the prequels or sequels, I think it depends on the quality of the work, obviously, the story itself, and then the questions it's trying to answer.
but also I think there is an aversion to stuff that just goes on forever, forever. Like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sure.
on our previous podcast, Black Nerd Power, we had a woman on the show, Kimber, and she would flatly state, "I don't like things that don't end."
Yeah. Right.
So like she wasn't heavy into like a lot of superhero stuff because it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't end, and
Right.
and also I think then you're also getting into the shared universe thing. Of, wait a minute, it's like three different people wrote this character, and they all wrote them a little bit different, and it's
Right.
like. Also, I think
Yeah.
that's kind of how manga is winning right now in America because most of the time it's the same creative team,
Yeah.
and it's kind of the same vision. Even if they go back for sequels, it's like normally the same people telling the story, and it's like this is the vision, this is the goal, and it kind of flows a little bit better. So you always have to be aware of that. Like I remember a friend who was like, "Man, I'm reading Spawn because Spawn it was like '96." He was like, "Spawn started like '92. That's only 4 years." He was like, "Y'all be talking all that X-Men stuff." I'm like, "I don't know where to start. It's a lot." So I mean,
Dang. And now you look at it, and Spawn has its own universe. It's like 30
yeah,
years of continuity, and now we've
yeah,
got all these different spawns running around. But
yeah,
yeah, I think it's just an interesting dichotomy of, okay, this is a different style of storytelling, and some people, it's not different strokes for different folks. Some people like it, some people don't like it. But
Mm-hmm.
I agree with Mr. Eaton. The last Ronin in particular, I think it just strengthens the overall brand, as I was saying earlier, of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And this is one that I'm happy to have in my collection. And I was looking at some last Ronin figures, boys, and there might be a new figure alert coming.
I bought that one.
Oh yeah.
At the comic shop in Wilmington. I
Oh
saw it, and I said, I think I'm gonna buy my first Ninja Turtle figure in about 30 years.
yeah.
Because the design is so dope. You know what I mean? Like, it's like that
Well,
figure is so good.
I love that it has every weapon from all
Yes,
brothers. And so it's
yes, it
like
does.
the last Ronin is the amalgam turtle. Like it's like every
Yeah,
turtle put together into one, paying tribute to the fallen brothers. But
yeah.
yeah, that's just a great design, great figure overall. And this story, I forgot to say, was co-written by Kevin Eastman, one of the original co-creators of the Turtles. So there is that authentic feel to it, that Tom Waltz also co-wrote the story. But yeah, it's definitely in that the same. It's authentic Turtles. It lives up to the hype. If you've been hearing about The Last Ronin, I think all three of us give it a 100% buy recommendation.
Buy that book.
It is our book of the month for December of 2022, ending the year strong on the comic book Kaiju. Actually, before we go, Mr. Marcus Seaberry, did you have any closing thoughts?
It's an amazing book. Again, it just drew me in. I could have finished it in one day. I just chose to like stretch it out. Like, guys, it is a good read. It is a thrilling, entertaining read. There is backstory, but even the backstory is compelling. And you'll see future versions of, like, a lot of people you've known from movies and comics, and you'll kind of see the offspring of some people. It's just a damn good comic, man.
Yeah,
it is. Before we get out of here, I wanted to. I have one, like, it's an aside. Buy the book. That's all I'll say about the book. It's fantastic. I have a Ninja Turtles based memory, and it's the holiday season, and this has to do with on Geekland. My dad, Tim Eaton, stepped in and recorded with us several times.
Yeah,
and of course he passed away in 2012, and actually this year be 10 years, which you see is crazy. But I had the like one of my best Christmas memories is, I don't remember how old I was, but we were opening presents. We do our thing on Christmas Eve, which is tomorrow, so I'm excited. I'm going to be traveling west tomorrow, but we're sitting there, and there's this huge, like, refrigerator sized box wrapped up, and when we're done passing out presents, I see it's for me, and my dad steps up and he opens the thing, because it's huge, way taller than me, and he opens this refrigerator box, and literally every Ninja Turtle comes spilling out onto me. I am buried under Ninja Turtle figures, and that is one of my most treasured, like, Christmas memories. So, happy holidays, Merry Christmas to everybody out there. Maybe you can have some good Ninja Turtle memories, or it's just some good memories for anything that you're into with your family this year. Just had to throw that in there.
Yeah, that is perfect, Mr. Eaton. Also perfect, Mr. Chris Eaton and Marcus Seaberry do a wrestling podcast called The Kickout Kaiju that you can check out each and every week. Mr. Eaton and Mr. Seaberry are reviewing different wrestling matches. They do commentary as the match unfolds. So you can always check them out at The Kickout Kaiju, our sister podcast on the Kaiju Network. Perhaps we will have one day, boys. So I'm looking forward to it. What's the next episode coming up? What's the next match?
The next one's going to be fun. Matter of fact, it'll be the first of January 1st, 2023 is at time of recording, with a friend of mine who was like my roommate during college, and still like one of my best friends. He's going to sit in with us for a match that I will not give you anything more than the name. It is the Invisible Man versus Invisible Stan.
Oh, mercy, Daddy. I cannot wait to listen to that episode, and I think all of our listeners cannot wait. So thank you very much for joining us each and every week. And as Mr. Eaton said, we hope you have a wonderful holiday and a great wrap up to your year of 2022. We will see you in 2023, where we will still be loving comics, and you should too.
Geeks out.